The
Handle.
record button.
Sorry, Joe.
So, hello everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us, whether you're here with us live in person or if you're viewing this later on. But my name is Joseph Dyro, psychic medium, and I'm here with author Peter Hammarberg to discuss some things with you tonight. So, Pete, can you say hi to everybody?
Hi to everybody. How are you? Thank you for joining us. This is something new for me, so please be courteous, as this is my first Zoom meeting, and I'm a little nervous. So I'm just gonna put that out there. But I'm very happy to be here, and I'm grateful for you to have me here.
Well, we'll try to go easy on Pete the best we possibly can. But what inspired this evening is because besides questions from clients, I've just been inspired for a while to just talk about some of my personal experiences with spirit that maybe didn't go so well, or maybe intimidated me. And what I intend to do with telling like some of these stories is for any of us who's sensitive to energy, like what's the necessities on our tool belt to deal with when we encounter spirit that may not be so nice, and just to spread some knowledge of that, but maybe also be a little entertaining. And I invited author Peter Hammarberg to also share some of his experiences, because I've read Pete's books, and which I'm going to show it right now, because this one was one of my particular favorites, and because it's a darker story. But I was just curious, man, the guy who wrote this, like he may have some interesting experiences that inspired this, so which led to me discussing this with Peter. And another story Peter has also written, which this is not the only time I'm going to bring these up, Pete, is Antilla, which is another wonderful story. And I'm also curious, this one maybe not particularly inspired by spiritual happenings, but a very interesting read as well. So Pete, if there's anything you'd like to say, just an opening statement about your books.
Well, as a matter of fact, you're right. Graven Frost is pulled from a lot of superstition, and it's from a lot of experiences of the supernatural and spooky happenings and haunted houses.
See that, Graven Frost.
And things that go bump in the night, and sometimes things that go bump in the late afternoon. And there's specific things in that book that pertains to what to do when you want to shut out the negativity, shut out the negative energy, and protect yourself. And I learned that through people like Joseph, who practice the white light, and they do the protective boundaries around you, and be basically putting up a force field, if you will, through where negative energies can't penetrate, so you're safe. And I use that in the book, and I like that, because it's kind of like a little bit of a tidbit where if you're reading it, you go, oh, let me give it a shot, and sure, it'll work. And then you might be feeling better when you're not feeling so good. Yeah.
What better way to be inspired by some things by in a book, in a story? Because even as a kid, I picked up on, oh, this is how you kind of work with life. They did it this way, so, and why not? Why can't we do it that way?
And I wish I knew these things earlier in life, because I've had many experiences with the paranormal, and it was basically like I've always attributed it to being a baby in the dark with a flashlight. Like, you just can't do it. Like you can only penetrate the darkness so much without guidance. So it's very important to have people like you do what you do.
Oh, yes, that is very true. And I do credit, because there was a time where I was interacting with spirit, and I was so new to it. And I'm so grateful for my teacher, whose name is Pat Longo. She's a healer here on Long Island. I believe you've met her too, Pete.
Yeah, she did a clearing for me. She did a cleansing before my wedding. Wonderful. And that was quite an interesting experience.
But just that she's my teacher, and so I credit her with a lot of things that I know and have learned now. But I want to bring up a story, Pete, because before, I believe it was not, I already met Pat, but it was back in the day, because I've been doing this for my my psychic medium stuff professionally for over 12 years now, because it's 2022, it's over 12 years now, and which puts me about 2010, maybe 2011, hit or miss. But this is before I really started taking like these lessons I've learned, I'll say, to heart, and like that I really got to do this. So my first story, which before I get going, I just wanted to remind you guys, I have my white candle lit. So this is just my intention of, gonna speak from the light, but I want to speak, a little bit of entertainment, but from, for some knowledge for all of you. And I love the back scratcher, Pete.
That's all I got right now, man. I'm sorry. Not
Well, I
prepared.
didn't tell you to be prepared with anything besides yourself, your wonderful self.
Thank you.
But so I encountered interesting energy once. I used to work for a big department store, and I was invited by a friend at work to go to a party on a house party on Fire Island, which was exciting because, I'm a young guy and let's just go. I don't remember where it was. I'm just going to say on Fire Island. But we went and everything was fine. Like, we got on the boat, like, dressed up for the night, got on the boat because it was a house party. It was like a cocktail party. I think it was like a fundraiser for something that was going on. And got on the boat. I was dressed up nicely with some of my friends from work because we all going together. We got there, got a cocktail. I personally don't drink that much, so I wasn't really going to drink the cocktail. And this is not a story about me getting drunk, but so like we're
What's
going
the
out
difference between meeting all together?
yeah. But I'm going about the party, talking to people, meeting people. If any of you have met me before, I can be social. So I eventually encountered one gentleman, a slightly older gentleman, from my perspective at the time, and not even talking to him, just talking to him. As I was speaking to him, I noticed that I got nauseous. And it's just like, okay, I'm nauseous, but I ignored it for a while. And then as he continued talking to me, it started getting stronger. And eventually our conversation ended and he walked away. And then it just kind of left me with that nausea in my stomach. And that nausea, very quickly grew from just my stomach to, I don't know how to describe, like I felt nauseous, like in my chest, and nauseous, like in other parts of my body. And it's just like, I don't know what's going on, because it's weird, because I had like a cocktail in my hand and I only sipped at it. It's like, there's really nothing for me to feel bad about. I didn't eat anything yet at the party. I ate before we left, so I felt like there's really no reason to feel nauseous. And so I remember walking into the bathroom and trying to like collect myself a little bit, because it was enough for me to be like, oh, I mean, this is like maybe 20 minutes after I first felt it. It's like, okay, this is enough for me to have to excuse myself to a different room. Let's see if I can calm myself down, because it was nausea. And then it became more than that. It was just kind of like, I feel like I was being like, something was coming at me from all directions. And I can't say it was like necessarily bad. It just felt like something's trying to get across to me. And when I was done with the bathroom, because I collected myself enough, I left the bathroom. And now at this point, like, the people I came with realized, like, what's wrong, because you disappeared for a little while. And I'm like, I'm fine, because didn't want anyone to panic about what's going on, because also none of them knew that I'm sensitive to spirit or psychic or anything. So this is something I kept to myself. And then it went away. And then it came back. It came back harder and like a bit stronger. Now the nausea was like really nausea. And I'm just like, all right, let's go outside and get some air, because the bathroom wasn't going to do it anymore. So I had to go outside of this house. So I was, and Fire Island properties, if you've been there, they're not very big. So there's not a lot of places to go, and where no one's going to be looking at you.
Everything's tight.
Yes, somehow I managed to find a spot between a couple of trees, which I hope no one thought I was peeing, but I'm like, I'm gonna stand over here. And that's when it like hit me in the face. It's like, it's something wants to talk to me. And at that time I didn't really have like, the tools on my belt to really understand, like, okay, I can talk to them, I can tell them to stop doing the things they are doing. But I definitely got something's attention, whether it was connected to the gentleman I was speaking to or something on the property. But it made me so nervous now and anxious and sick to my stomach, because now I'm aware that because I'm aware, like, it wasn't necessarily something bad, but it's definitely something that wanted my attention, now that it knew that I'm aware of it. And which was a very bad experience, because then the rest of my evening was me trying to escape this thing. And I didn't even go as far as like, who are you, what are you, because I just wasn't in that mindset at that point, because it caught me off guard. And now it's just more about, I got to get myself back to feeling better, because I have to engage with people more so, because I'm at a party and I'm with people at work. What do I do? eventually, because I didn't think of it right away, because this is just my mindset at the time. Eventually, I asked my angels and guides, you got to help me with this. You got to get rid of this. And they did come in and help. My feeling went away, but I did feel helpless, because this is also, like a 12 years younger version of me, and a little very, very new to all this. And once you're in it, in the moment, it's like, what do I do? It's just like, I'm
Yeah.
feeling this thing, and it's a powerful feeling, and it's making me sick, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, eventually, again, I asked my angels and guides to help me out, and they did. And the thing I felt went away, but I was still left behind with like the nausea and a wacky feeling that I had to, pretend wasn't happening, because how do you go back to a party and explain to everybody what's going on with you? So, but that was the experience. It was a weird experience, and it's like, it's, strongly in my mind. But that's like the first thing I would, reminded me that before I go out anywhere, not just to a party, but before I go anywhere, I got to ground myself and shield myself from anything, any energies. Fortunately, it's gotten to a point now where, I have it kind of defaultly on. So if something wants to say something to me, like I get the audio, and it's just like, okay, you're here. I don't have to pay attention to you. You don't have, and I've worked it up where they can't affect me in that way anymore. But I would just emphasize to anybody that they can't, that they don't have to go through all that at all.
Well, that's just it. A lot of folks don't even know that they have any kind of power to combat something trying to influence them. Even the idea of contact, it all takes energy. And whether they have the energy to do it themselves, or they're going to pull it from you. And I've got this theory that I call the fear eater theory. And basically, whenever you see like a horror movie that has to do with a house haunting, it always starts small. It's never this huge thing. The doors blow off the hinges, and like, okay, well, obviously there's a problem. We got to go call somebody. No, it starts off small. And I believe that it's a buildup of these fears and these anxieties, and they just feed off that, and they just draw from your energy, and they feed from it, and they become stronger. And then you notice as time goes on, things start getting more and more profound. The knocking is more rhythmic or harder, and the everything's upside down now for some reason, and the tables the tables flipped and the chairs are stacked. Like, okay, what is going on here? So it's a gradual buildup, and it's terrifying, but you can, through practice and understanding, kind of take control of the situation. And I'm sure that there's times you just can't do it yourself. And that's where people like you come in, where you can come in and say, okay, hold up, I got it. Let me handle it.
Maybe more so now.
Well, yes, but that's just it. That was your journey. You didn't start, nobody starts off a black belt. You gotta start first. Learning the steps, the stances, the basic maneuvers. And then as you grow, you start to hone those things. Then you get better and better and better at it.
Yep, which brings me to where I am at this current moment in time, which is, I think, pretty good. Like, I'll say very little I'll say is intimidating anymore, because it's just like, yeah, I'm aware. But that's just, again, as you said, I built it up. It's taken a long time, but I built it up. But I'm not saying, it would be very difficult for anyone who has any sensitivities to learn how to block things out and, just ground and shield themselves from anything.
Well, it's a good idea. It's a good thing to learn.
Yes, and maybe like I can describe a little bit of that in a little while. Pete, did you have any interesting house encounters?
I've had a few. I've got a couple of interesting, non-frightening, but then there's one that always stuck with me that was pretty damn dark. But the first time I ever had an encounter, it was pretty innocuous. I was 8 years old. My sister had passed but a couple of months prior to that. And, I always, let me preface by saying I always try to find a scientific explanation for everything. Because 9 times out of 10, I overreact. You'll hear a knock and oh no. Oh wait, no, that's just the pipe. Somebody flushed the toilet and it's an old pipe and it's banging. Okay. But there's sometimes where you're just looking a ghost in their face and you say, well, I got nothing. So, but I remember waking up at night, and the way my room was positioned was at the end of a hallway, and then there was the living room with a big bay window. So the moonlight, when there was moonlight, always poured in about halfway down the hallway. And I woke up, and there was a female, just a young lady, looking at the pictures that adorned the wall. Now we had all of the family pictures on one side of the wall, and I thought it was my mom checking the thermostat. So I went back to sleep. No big deal. The next night, again, same exact thing. The moonlight, it was like a bluish moonlight spilling in through the bay window, going about halfway down the hall. And it seemed like this figure was even closer now, still just a profile silhouette pointing at the pictures. So at that point, the next morning, I asked my mom, I said, were you awake last night? Were you in the hallway? And she said, no. So either she's sleepwalking or I'm having, I don't know what, but it happened every single night. And each night, the person, the entity, so to speak, would come closer and closer and closer until she finally got to where my sister's room was. And then I woke up one night, looked down the hallway, same exact everything, except she wasn't there. So I don't know if that was just trauma. I don't know if that was just what they call night terrors, even though I wasn't afraid. It was almost like an observation. It was just this thing that was occurring, and I didn't have any kind of repulsion or intrigue. It was just this thing that was happening. But from then on, I would always hear her voice or somebody's voice, a female's voice, calling my name,
Oh,
and it
that's
would be
creepy.
all hours of the day. It is, especially when nobody's home. But then when there were people home, I'd hear Peter, and like, what? No, my mom was like, what? I'm like, what, Ma, what? She's like, what? I'm like, you called me, what? She's like, I didn't say anything. Well, it wasn't Dad, obviously, unless he's just playing a joke on me. But yeah, always I would hear that there. So that, I mean, those were like just like innocuous little things that would happen throughout the years. But that was my first experience of something that I couldn't quite explain. And obviously, I was 8, so my understanding of the universe wasn't exactly as less limited as it was now. But
Well, don't sell yourself short.
well, that's what I do. That's my brand. But yeah, so that was my first. But
For
if you want
people
to jump in.
to jump in, like if anybody's experiencing something like that, a suggestion I have, and you don't have to listen to anything I suggest, like if it's intimidating you, if you're witnessing, I'll say, spirit, an apparition, down the hallway, whatever, the first tool you can always go to is your imagination. In your imagination, I'll say draw a line around the room that you're in, and from that line, create a box. This would be the only time I'd tell anyone to put themselves in a box. Put yourself in a box of white light. If you can imagine, 4 corners, floor to the ceiling, and give yourself the 4 walls, ceiling, and a floor, and just say, I'm in my box now. You can't touch me. And once you do that in your imagination, you have to work with that and trust that you've created something that nothing can penetrate. Now, because once you create it, it's in your mind, you're using your energy around you, and your energy is just waiting for you to tell it what to do. You've created a box, and other energies can't penetrate this. Now, I do want to emphasize, if someone physical, someone else in the house walks into the room, that's a logical thing that would happen, and you would expect that. But once they enter your box, their energy is now incorporated into your box. But even though somebody physical has walked through it, like through the door, you're still holding back anything that's just energy behind that. So you have to trust that once you create that, it's set up, and it stays that way until you take it down or become distracted. So if something's intimidating you, you can put yourself in a box. The easiest thing to do is put yourself, make that room impenetrable with energy, and anything else energetic can't come in, would be the first thing I say. If something's a little more than intimidating and, try, like maybe wants to come in, they can't come in. Once you've set up the box, and you have to trust it, because the biggest mistake I explain to clients of mine is, if you don't trust it, it doesn't work. Because because your thought energy is also making this thing happen. So if you don't trust what you've done, then it's really not going to work for you, because if you're so intimidated by whatever is on the outside of that box, you're allowing it to come right in. You have to trust that you're stronger than whatever else is out there.
That makes sense, because intent is the main thing.
Yes, intent is the main thing. And I mean, in the moment, things can become intimidating, and it's like, what, and and your mind's not always like, oh yeah, put myself in a box, like I gotta do the thing Joe told me to do. I understand, like sometimes you're just so, it's just like in the moment, you don't think of anything like that. But if you have any intention of shielding yourself, protecting yourself, if you can give yourself that 2 seconds in your mind about, here's whatever I need in my imagination to protect me, whether it's a shield, something else, put yourself in a bubble. The intention is what's going to work with the energy, because once you set it up, there's nothing that the energy can do about it. You've set your energy up to be protection. There's nothing anything else can do about it.
As long as you believe in it.
As long as you believe in it.
Yeah, you got to stay positive and stay focused on that. Which is hard to do when something scary is happening. And it's no joke, because it's not one of those like, hello, it is 8 p.m. I'm going to haunt you now. It's this thing that happens. You wake up at 3 a.m. and then there's the shadow in the dark corner of your room that seems awfully dark, darker than the rest of the room. And it seems like it's swelling. It's moving and it's undulating. And is it chuckling? Why is it laughing? Why is it looking at me? Then you're like, okay, box, please, box. So, but it takes practice, I guess,
It does take practice. I'll say a lot of people don't they don't master it right away, because again, it works with your beliefs. You have to do it and trust that what you've created in your mind is what's going to work. And that's all you need to do. It's the intention that you set in your mind. You use your imagination as a way to wrap your mind around what you're doing. But the intention is really everything you need. And I'll say people have, like, that's like the hardest part, is knowing that your intention is all you need to protect yourself from something. I had to use that. I'll say again, I'm going back some years now. I mean, I have some years of experience, but I was hired to do a house clearing in Connecticut. And so this was a house that was unoccupied, because at the time the realtor was the one who hired me, and she asked me to come in because they said they haven't been able to sell this place. And she didn't give me the history, but she just asked me, like, can I come and clear it out? So I got myself to Connecticut, which was a bit of a trip for me, being in the middle of Long Island. And when I get there, she lets me in, but she didn't want to come in right away. She said, you go do your thing and I'll be over here. And I'm like, okay. And once I walked in, I'm like, yeah, whoever's in here doesn't want to leave. And I'm like, that was my first impression, is like, they don't want to leave. This is going to be difficult. Not impossible, but I'll say this would probably be difficult. What I immediately got was, there's a woman in here who does not want to leave. She was connected to the property, not the house, but the property. And she didn't want anyone chasing her away. So she made my life very difficult that day, because she did not want to leave. And I was doing my thing, and she wasn't the only spirit present there, but she was the one giving me the most, a very Long Island phrase is agita, because she's just like, I'm not doing it. You're not going to make me. And I said, well, fortunately, when I do this, I'm acting on behalf of the owner, or whoever. I'm acting on behalf of the owner, I mean, through the realtor, but still I have the authority to do such a thing. And I'll say it's a combination of, I'm doing what I'm here to do, and I have, and I bring an entourage of energy as well, to assist in whatever it is I'm going to do. And I've learned the tools I need. I've learned to make this happen no matter what. But she was a challenge, because the house was not occupied, but there was there was a couple of boxes and with some things. I think at one point it was CDs that what stuck out in my mind, because she was moving CDs towards me. And this wasn't flying through the air, but this was on the floor creeping towards me. But I'm like, it was just funny at the moment, because I'm like, it's only CDs, and it was only creeping over across the floor. And I'm like, a younger version of me would have been scared about that. But I'm like, nope, it's just CDs, and she's not even picking them up, because that was all she was able to do. And I'm like, which was, at some point, I feel like, this is hilarious. It's CDs on the ground.
Did you just see that orb go by your head?
I didn't notice that. If someone else noticed it, that's just interesting because, you know, I'm sure I have an entourage of spirit around me right now.
I feel kind of bad for that ghost, though. I mean, from a ghost humanitarian, I don't even know. Uh, she didn't want to leave, and obviously she had no need to stay. But
She
some
had no
folks,
need to stay. They wanted a new owner occupying the space, but she did not own the space. From what It wasn't just what she was telling me, it was also from what my hired guys were able to give me a download of like some origin. So she was attached to the property because she had nothing to do with the house. She didn't want to leave. She was a spirit connected to the property, and she hasn't gone to the light yet. She passed on the property. She wasn't buried there because people asked me that too, but she remained there, but she hasn't been to the light. So, but she fought me because she didn't want to do it. She was against everything. She didn't want to go. She was afraid of what would be on the other side for her. And it was part of it. Again, this is a conversation going on in my head. I'm not saying this out loud for anyone to hear me. This is all in my head because most of this stuff is in my head, happening through my head. And just to explain to her, but again, like, you know, she was trying, and that's where like the CDs moving on the floor was her trying to intimidate me. And I mean, I didn't say it at the moment.
good try.
I thought to myself later, it's a nice try, but it wasn't scary enough to chase me away. But she tried, because at one point she got in my face, and she really just she was trying to be scary. And again, I'm like, this is already now I'm a seasoned person at this time, and I'm like, you're not, like, this isn't scaring me. It's just like, because I've done this already. I've been to Manhattan. Like, maybe I'll get to a Manhattan story later. It's like this is not scaring me. And
You think you scare me, ghost? I've been to Manhattan.
But she wanted me to leave, and she was trying everything she could to get me to leave. And fortunately, like, we were able to get let's see, relatives of hers who helped her cross over into the light by the time I was done. This took a while though, because I wasn't expecting to be there as long as I was, but she was a challenge. I did continue, because I didn't wrap it up the moment she was gone. I still had other things, I still had to do my saging around the property. I still had to do my energy clearing. When I usually do my my house blessings and energy clearings, I set up a crystal grid, usually with some candle arrangements, depending on, does the owner allow me to do such a thing? Or I don't need to do that. It's just more a little bit, it makes me feel good, and a little bit of it's just calling in certain energies for what I'm trying to accomplish for them. But what I also had on my tool belt for that day was also the natural spirits of the land or of that particular property. I also had to call in to be part of this entourage because she was problematic. And as I said, fortunately, she was able to move on and go into the light, but I had to get people, spirits to come and help move her forward in that sense. So I couldn't spirit with doing that. I just had to be the one to call them in and say, okay, we need somebody to come get them. And, while she was interacting with me, it worked out. I mean, I did my job. The realtor thanked me when we were done. I actually never heard from her if she sold the house shortly, if she did it shortly after or anything after. She thanked me for my work, and and I closed the door on that. And if anyone ever wishes to tell me, if anything worked out, I love to hear it, but I don't always hear from my clients.
You think that they would just be like, "We're good. We're not dead in the attic."
Well, still, this is a little. I mean, I'm sure even as from a realtor standpoint, she may not be. She may not want to share any of that because not everybody's on board with this. So
Right.
to say oh, I hired a medium, took care of it. Now that's why we sold the house. Now I'm not saying that happened, but I'm just like, but it would make sense to me that you don't
Or at
want to
least a
tell
personal
people.
message, like it worked out. You don't want to
Yep.
broadcast like, "Look at as heck. Well, it's okay. We're cleared." It's not like it's roaches or anything.
Yeah. But I've had a few interesting experiences. I do want to share maybe a more intimidating experience, but I wanted to go back to you, Pete, if if there was
Well,
something else you wanted to share.
one of the darker experiences I've had uh, that still stays with me today, and my father's always been a skeptic. If he didn't see it, it doesn't exist type thing, which we'll play into the story later. But my friend Angelo, he was staying over. We were in high school, and we were going on a summer vacation, and he always tagged along. So he was like, he's part of the family. So he would sleep on the air mattress on the floor in my room, and I would be on my bed. And everyone's going to bed because we had a big day tomorrow. So everybody go get some shut eye. We were going to get an early start in the AM. And I remember turning out the lights, laying down, everything was good. And then I heard what sounded almost like a car stereo going by. That was a little too loud, which on Long Island, absolutely not out of the ordinary. That's just every 5 minutes. So, but it didn't go by. It was just this sound, and it was indiscernible. It was just this noise. And then it sounded like maybe the neighbor had their TV on too loud, and they were watching one of those late night talk shows. But it was just one person talking, and there was no laugh track. There was no applause signs. It was just this sound of a person frantically talking. But it was low. It was still in the distance. So whatever, maybe it's the neighbor's TV. Then it sounded like a dude straight outside the room, like outside of my bedroom, which I was on the first floor. So you could just, it was a 4-foot distance from the ground to the window. And then there was this talking. There was that clearly somebody outside the window just talking incessantly, this nonstop talk. And it was very, very, very intense. And it was getting even more intense. And then all of a sudden it's inside the room, and it's in the corner of the room, that dark corner that I mentioned even before, and it's getting louder and 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 louder. And now I'm paralyzed. I don't know what's going on. Angelo's not waking up. Nothing's happening. This guy, now this voice is getting closer and closer and more intense and more intense and more intense. And now it is on top, literally here from my face, screaming. I can't make out the words, but it was enmity. It was hatred. It was anger. It was just this nonstop deluge of just babble hatred. And all I could do in that moment of absolute terror, paralyzing terror, was smack Angelo on the top of the head from where I was on the bed, from where he was on his air mattress, and just papped him right on the top of the head. And he said, when he woke up, he heard, "Ah!" And it stopped. The screaming stopped. I could move again. He wondered why the hell I slapped him in the eye. And then my father bursted into the room. He just smacked the door straight open and started yelling, "Who the hell is screaming?" So there you go. So there was an audio thing happening. And it wasn't just to me, it was isolated at first. And I do think that, in horror lore, there's a lot of hauntings that get isolated to the specific person who's exhibiting vulnerability, so to speak. And that's why they're like, well, I slept through the night. I didn't hear anything bumping. But I digress. But I heard it plain as day. Angelo heard it, the last of it, and my father heard it. He heard the last of it. And whether I was having, again, maybe some weird night terror thing, perhaps, and I was the one screaming, I don't know. But I remember vividly being awake and not even being tired because I was excited for the day to come. And usually whenever I have an early morning, I can't sleep at night. But there was this thing paralyzing me right above my face. I could almost feel its breath screaming right into my face, all of the things that it hated. And I'm not sure if it was jealous that I was alive and it wasn't. I don't know what the deal was. But my father heard it. He heard it and he thought it was one of us. It didn't sound like one of us. And he even admitted that it didn't sound like any of us. It didn't sound like two teenage kids. It sounded like this crazy ass man that was having a bad time. But I was helpless. And that's the moral of that thing. If I had half of the tools that I know now and half of the tools that Joseph teaches and cultivates, it would have been a whole different scenario. but it came out of nowhere. There it was. It was just this thing. What is this? It started creeping up, creeping up, creeping up, creeping up, creeping up, intense, 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 and build up, build up, build up, build up, build up, boom. And then it was full-fledged horror. So that wasn't so nice. We still had a nice vacation, but whatever.
We're like, but you were fine the next day.
Well, I spoke to Angelo about it. Dad still was convinced that it was one of us. And he said he didn't hear any of the screaming. He didn't hear anything until he woke up, until I woke him up. And then he heard a distinct voice screaming, and then it got cut off. I don't know if his waking altered the energy in the room, or the fact that I was able to actually move broke whatever kind of deer in a headlight trance I was in. But something shifted at that moment, and I think that was enough to disrupt whatever was happening.
When you create a distraction, sometimes energies, again, it's a distraction. They're not focused because you're not focusing on it anymore, and your concentration's broken onto something else. And again, when it's like if Angelo woke up, then again, that's enough of a distraction. You're focused on him. He's got to be introduced to what's going on. It's enough to break, because it takes energy for any spirit or anything to interact with us on that level. And
it took
also,
a lot of energy,
yes, especially to even do anything like audio, or even when you get something visual, it takes a bit out of them. So again, and it's easy to break it, like, by simply distracting yourself, because you're not giving it your attention. Therefore, it's not drawing attention energy to continue doing what they're doing, because once they got your attention, it's perfect, because they, it just keeps that ball rolling.
And as for those who just tuned in, like it feeds into a theory that I call fear eating. And these spirits, these negative dark entities, feed on negative energy. And if they can make you nervous, anxious, afraid, you exude that energy, and they just eat it, and it gets stronger and stronger and more intense, and they're able to do more things. The more scared you are, the more they have to play with. And it's like those skeptics, like, I could walk through an entire abandoned insane asylum and not have to worry about a thing, because they're not giving off any of that. There's nothing for anything to feed off of, so in essence, they're already protected. The people who are skeptic, and they're like, nope, I don't care if that's moving across the room. They're giving them nothing. But the rest of us, the sensitive people who are like, oh God, here we go again, we're just giving them a smorgasbord of energy.
So what I want to also explain to everybody out there, like, what can you do in a situation like that? Because I myself, and again, a younger version of me, because it hasn't happened in quite some time, I used to be woken up by random spirits. And again, not all bad. Some of them just really wanted to get a message across to somebody, and they're like, oh, you're the person nearby, let's just talk to you. And I had to start setting the rules, and it's like, okay, I don't want anyone waking me up anymore. But what do you do in the moment if something like that's happening? Because again, it's, you may have to try to trade yourself. And I'm like, how do you trade yourself for such a thing? But in the moment, again, you got to remember that you can, if you're interacting with something, you can throw whatever you want in your imagination at it. If you want to throw throw a physical bat, swing a bat in your mind at them, do that, because that is enough. The intention is, I'm smacking you with something, and you can.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yes.
Sweet.
Because if you can imagine in your mind in that moment, again, hit them. If I'll say is the easiest way I can explain that, because you will hit them energetically, because think of it, their energy, your mind is using your energy in your imagination. Just imagine hitting them. Yes, that might make it whatever angry, but I want you comfortable with that. You can do this. You can do this, because once you hit them, it's a distraction. Now you can maybe try to gather yourself a little bit and throw up the shields. Once you do that, they can't, and you trust your shields, they can't touch you now. And I'll say, it's not the easiest thing to do, but if you ever feel like you're being, if you're being pushed to do that, but you can. And But again, sometimes when those things are happening, even if you're aware of the tools that you have on your belt, like it doesn't always occur to you, like, oh yeah, do that, because you're so involved in the moment. So
Yeah.
if that's happening, do your best, and but I'll say, if anything, try to distract them. And again, this is also an opportunity, if people pray to your angels, ask someone to come in. Angels will come in, will help. If there's anything else, anybody else you want to pray to, go right ahead. Everybody that you want to bring in, like if you want to bring in God, if you want to bring in deities, if you want to bring in whatever you got that you truly trust and believe in, they'll come in and help you. But I say this because something like that, you have to invite them. You have to ask them to come and help you. I mean, not that they wouldn't otherwise, but I'll say because spirit's not allowed to override our free will. So the more you invite them, then they can come in and do more. But this also draws into the question, well, why aren't your guides and people are like already on here, stopping anything
Right.
coming at you? And on some level, yes, they are. But on other levels, they can't override your free will. If your free will allows anything to be around you, there's nothing they can do about it. You have to you've chosen to interact with spirit on any level, and therefore you're interacting with them. This is where being in a higher vibration would help be very beneficial, because then you're not really interacting with so much lower vibrating spirits. And as a younger version of me was not aware of that, so it's like, all right, it's everybody and everything out there I was open to interact with.
Which is my whole baby in the dark with a flashlight.
Yes.
You're piercing the darkness just so much, but there's so much around you that you're not seeing. And they all see you, little one, with the little light, being adorable and vulnerable. And it's scary, but obviously we're not as helpless as all that, but you are insofar as if you don't know that you're not helpless. And we're stronger than anything.
Yes.
That's what I've learned through you, is that we are always the dominant force when it comes to supernatural entities. But that's why they play the games. That's why they're always doing the thing at 3 a.m. in the morning, when you're waking up out of nothing, and all of a sudden, what's happening? Like, hold on, don't talk to me until I have my coffee, you damn ghost. My business hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yes. That's pretty much what I've set up. Let's see, Pete, we got a comment from Natalie that she's going to blame you for any nightmares she has tonight from your wonderful storytelling abilities.
Well, thank you, my darling, and I apologize, and you're welcome.
Oh, let's see. Just keep on this note. So I do want to.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'll tell you a quick light story of a ghost that I think is actually like, the way they manifest themselves to me is visually. I will hear, yes, but I don't do. Maybe because I've not practiced, or I've not actually gone into the whole like cultivating my sensitive mediumship abilities, where I could sense everything in my mind and it's playing out there. So they show up. They actually show up in front of me. And one time I was with my buddy Al, and we were at his house, and we decided to go get a snack. So we exit his room, but as soon as we opened his door, across the hallway was his grandma's room. And he can attest to this. He's not here tonight, but I'm sure I could ask him, and he'll do. And there was a man, all in white, and I mean, even he was white. He was as if he was like a coloring book illustration, white. So in a suit, and he had a fedora in his hand, and he walked from his grandmother's room, put the hat on his head, walked halfway down the flight of stairs, and vanished. Now, I saw that plain as day. I was going to go get some cold pizza. That was it. So we were lucid. There was nothing going on. No drinking, no drugs, nothing like that. Nothing hinky. And there was this dude dressed to the nines in a suit with a fedora. So I saw this, and as I looked at Al, his eyes were giant. So I know he saw something. So I said, "Did you see that?" He goes, that was my grandpa.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
we walked to his grandma's room, and she was laying in bed just watching TV. And he said, "Grandma, was Grandpa just here?" And she said, "Yeah, he visits me sometimes." So she validated that there was this entity whom she knew as her husband, and Al recognized as his grandpa. I've never seen the man before, but he had a bald head, handsome dude. Like, I could describe him to a T. So Al brought me downstairs to the family photo albums, and sure enough, he showed me a picture of his grandpa, and it looked identical, suit and hat, all perfect. It was a perfect manifestation of a entity, and it was of the light. Came to visit. He wanted to see his best gal. He was like, "Okay, I'll check in on you later," and he pieced out halfway down the stairs.
Ooh.
Totally light, totally like beautiful. It was a beautiful experience, but it was so vivid, and like it was wild, but no harm, just total calm,
No.
nice. It wasn't even a scary, like it was jarring insofar as, like, you don't usually see this happening, but it wasn't like, "Oh
Right.
my God, a ghost." It was like, huh.
Well, that's, but that's also what can happen. Our loved ones do visit us very often, and if you happen to catch somebody, in, say in the act of visiting, then you just happen to see spirit, come and visit you. Because spirit will do that. Like, our loved ones will come and visit us and walk through the spaces. Sometimes though, sometimes it's people you don't even know, and it's just spirit walking through, and they're just trying to get from point A to point B. It just happens to be through your living room, and people,
I've seen that a lot.
because it's
We
just like,
call them like the shadow people. You see them like just, or
well,
you
it's
see a
that.
cat.
Yes, and they really are just used, like, it's like crossing the street. We're just trying to get over there, and the street just happens to be through the house, and they have nothing to do with you, but they're just walking through to get to somewhere else in some shape or form, because from their perspective, the spirit shared with me, from their perspective, they're crossing the street. It's not where your house is, but they're across that street, and it just happens to overlap,
Right.
I guess, dimensionally, that we're catching them in the moment that they're doing it near us, maybe because we on some level we can feel them or know that this is going on, and we just catch that in that moment between it. Because again, I've spoken to clients, and they're intimidated by the fact that it's just happening at all, not even and like, forget that it's grandma, grandpa, or someone else that they even know. They're just intimidated the fact that it's happening, because again, sometimes you just happen to interact with spirit today, or see something that you weren't expecting to see.
Well, it's not like having a chalupa for the first time. It's not something that naturally occurs. It's something that happens all the time, but you don't know that it's happening until you know that it's happening. And then you can't not know that it's happening. And then you're firing on all pistons. You're like, that might have just happened, or I'm going insane. I'm
Yeah.
not sure which is what.
I once had I was going to bed one night, and this guy just happened to pop into my head. He told me his name, he told me how he passed, he told me that his niece worked down the street from where I lived. A bit down the street. It was a little bit of a walk. And I'm just like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? It's like, well, I want you to tell her that I'm here. And I'm like, I'm trying to go to sleep, dude. It's like, at that point, like, I didn't think of myself, oh yeah, tell him to go away. And I'm just like, so he made me promise that I would go the next day to visit her, because he said she's gonna work the next day. And I'm like, you know what it is? I'm also like kind of falling asleep, so I'm just like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it, whatever. And I said, you got to leave me alone now. And he left me alone. But then the following morning, he, after I woke up, because I didn't set a rule at that point, he was just like, are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it? And I'm just like, and I could hear him, but I'm watching not a shadow, but it's just kind of like the impression that somebody is there. It's almost like you're like looking at like glass, like a glass outline of a figure, and I'm like, okay, but I'm like,
Like a
what do
shimmer.
I do? It's like, how do I do that? How do I just walk up to a stranger and tell them I'm channeling like a loved one? But he kept pushing, and he's like, you got to tell her, because she's the one closest to me, physically, because I could walk to where her job is down the street. And I ended up doing it. I took a lot of courage out of me, because I'm
Wow.
like, I don't do this. I'm not like, how do I walk up to a stranger and start describing stuff to them? But he directed me where to go, and apparently it was all, because again, I'm also saying, like, am I really hearing this? Am I really hearing this guy correctly? And is it the right address? Do I have the right name? Like, I hope all this goes well.
Please don't mace me or call the police.
Yes, that was the other, like, half worry I had going on, because I'm also like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I ended up walking into the store. It was a store, and I asked for this girl's name, and she was there. So I'm like, all right, I introduced myself, explained who I was, and she was open to it, fortunately, because the gentleman I described, she did have a gentleman in her family pass, and it was nice to pass along the message. But it was just like, for me, that was the most intimidating. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm actually going to walk in front of a stranger and and say some of this.
Okay, Joe, here we go. It's gonna be weird.
But that was
but you
like,
did
that
it.
was weird. I am so grateful that she was open. She was so open and receptive to me, just being, just walking into her place of work and being like, hey, I have a message for you, because this guy wouldn't leave me alone last night. And I guess since I was nearby at the time, I'm just going to explain this to you. And she was open to it. I just appreciate so much. I mean, Spirit said she'd be open to it, but even again, you still don't know how someone's going to receive it. And again, I'm a stranger walking off the street. It's like, I could have been anything, but Spirit knew what they were doing, wanted to get the message across, and I was just delivering the mail. Which I don't do that. I don't, like I've said, this is too intimidating for me. This is too, like, I can't do this. It's
but you did it, and it was kind of like a achievement unlocked,
yes.
like.
It really was one of those like Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost. It's just like, okay, you're gonna tell me what to do, and I'm gonna do this. It's like, I can't believe I'm doing this, and I can't believe I'm gonna walk into a place I've never been to, and hope someone I've never met before is working there, and hopefully this whole scenario works out, which it did, which I'm grateful for. But I'm like, I'm never doing this again. This is just racking my heart and my head so much.
Well, that's asking a lot of you, and it was magnanimous that you accepted the mission and pulled it off. And it worked out. But there you go. There's another thing that you could say that was like, you were asked to go above and beyond your comfort zone, but you did it, and it worked out perfectly. But then you said, okay, yeah, I can do it. Thank you very much. Don't do it again. And they won't. Like, yes, I can do it. Don't ask me to do it again.
It is nice to know that I can follow directions like that, and it's like, all right, because again, it's it's not a person just telling me in front of me. It's a person from my perspective. It's in my head telling me you're going to do this, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. Oh God, I hope I'm not arrested.
Please don't arrest me.
Don't arrest me for trying to just deliver a message. That was all I was trying to do.
But it does kind of bring me up to another story that actually does involve you, and kind of, if people are up to it, another story that might be a little creepy.
I think they are.
But I think that's why you're here. But I don't want to assume. But it does kind of encapsulate everything that you are about, because you're a part of this story, and you actually, you came and you helped. Well, long story short, if I may. Not 2 years ago, I reckon it was, my wife, who doesn't usually see spirit, she feels them, she hears them, intuitive, but I'm usually the one that sees them. But she was rocking our child in the rocking chair. He's got a little glider, and something told her to look up. So she looked up, and there in the corner of the room by the closet was a woman. And Alex, our son, was crying, and he had been crying, and that's why she went in there to comfort him. And she was standing there. And Christina said, "Can I help you?" And the woman said that your baby needs me. He's crying. She's like, "Yes, he's crying. He's calling to me." Now, to her credit, she kept her composure. No, Christina kept her composure and had said, "No, he was crying for his mother, and I'm here. Thank you for your concern." But the spirit wouldn't take thank you, goodbye as an answer, and kept insisting that my son needed her, that he called out to her, and that she came to be with him. And she said that she was dressed in like a 1950s housewife, like sitcom type, you know, with the smock apron and all that, and she wouldn't take no for an answer. But Christina, to her credit, kept her cool, and she basically told her that you are not needed, you're not welcome in this room, you're going to need to leave. And my son was not calling to you. Thank you for your concern, thank you for your caring, but you need to go now. And hearkening back to what we were speaking about having our power over, actually putting our intent out there and having them have no choice but to listen, she left. However, sometimes with your intention, you need to be very specific, because strange things were happening in the house. Things were being moved, noises, just footsteps, knocking, lots of knocking. And it's an older house, but sometimes a knock is not a pipe or a creaky wood, piece of wood, a floorboard. I forgot the word that existed for floorboard, and it's floorboard. So sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's an intelligent knock. But so we called Joseph. Would you mind coming up? Yes. Hello, Joseph. We may have a problem. Would you mind coming up and cleansing the house? We've done saging. Saging's good, but sometimes you need like a heavy hitter to just come in and just clear the rafters of all the bats. So enter Joseph.
That's me.
He has his thing. That's it. Hands a fella in a hat. And he starts doing his thing. He's smudging. He's doing all around the house. Boo, boo, boo. He goes upstairs, and I hear him say, "Oh, hello." Turns out that woman never left. Christina had put a tourmaline grid in the baby's bedroom and charged it. So no entity of, I should say, no lower vibrational entity could go in. So it stopped her from entering my son's room, but it never stopped her from traipsing around the house. So this spirit was walking up and down, pacing the hallway outside of my son's room. So enter Joseph. That's your cue.
I'm sorry. I was just waiting for the next thing.
You are the next thing, sir.
I am the next.
And what did you do?
So I had an interesting conversation with said spirit, because she was. What I felt from her was that she was lonely, and this was a way to not be lonely anymore. Was really the gist of, I'll say, what I felt what the motivation was. But I remember she also just put up a fight, because she's just like, you're not doing it. And I'm like, and how this kind of works is, I'm acting on behalf of the owner, and they own the space. Therefore, anything, if they don't want it here, it can't exist. So it took a little while to kind of literally push her out, I'll say out the door, but in this instance, it's kind of through the wall and pushing her out the wall, like to the other side. This is the second floor. So having her outside now, can't come in. And she did a little chasing around because she did not want to leave. And I could, with my eyes, I could see her at one point just kind of looking through, I think, one of the windows on the second floor, because she's just like, nope, I don't want to leave. And I'm just like, yeah, you have to now. You can't be here anymore. And
you extended it to the property too.
Yep, because I ended up doing that. So my barrier extended to the full extent of the property, which ultimately, stopped her, because she can't come even close. And because one of the techniques I've learned to do is like how to do that on a property is, is to every visible corner of a property, you create like a ley line point, and you stop anything that's not desirable from passing through. But she, I ultimately had to talk to like her, and it's like therapy. It's like therapy for people who have passed over, who have crossed over. I mean, to help her want to go into the light and not have the need to be here anymore. So it was a little more work as I was walking around the property, creating the ley line thing, because I felt, at that point, not just her, anybody else who had, any intentions other than for the highest good of the household. Because even though, saying that, wanting to help the baby is a good intention, it's not really a good intention, because it was for her benefit, not the family's. Therefore, spirits like that can come through. But it was an interesting conversation to have, because I mean, once I'm in it and I'm kind of speaking to spirit, I kind of get the lowdown of like, not just because they're talking, you just feel like this is what it feels like. It feels like she was just incredibly lonely, and she didn't know where to go and what to do, and she felt lost for a very long time, and just trying to assist with her, opening up and accepting that, she's passed on, and you need to go into the light. But what was, I think, just the interesting things that you encounter is like, yes, I remember walking up the stairs and just like, yeah, you're in the hallway, and it's like very clearly in the hallway to me.
When I heard you go, oh, hello, I said, oh, here we go. She never left. But the fact that she was pacing.
Mm-hmm. Which is just something to keep in mind, that yes, you have to be specific when you set the rules, because you can set all the rules, but you need to be specific. Otherwise, there's a loophole in there for them to do something else if they want to stick around.
And to Christina's credit, though, she showed the intent. And
yes.
This is late at night, mind you, and we were woken up. Alex was inconsolable. He's like barely 1 year old, maybe, and so she's exhausted. Everybody's exhausted. He's screaming his head off. So I could see where the spirit was thinking, like, I'm a mother. There's a baby crying. Okay, let me use my trauma and attach this. But Christina's intention was very, 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 like, matter of fact, not giving any kind of leeway, not giving any kind of wiggle room, and that worked. And then laying down the tourmaline grid, charging that, stop that from coming in. Didn't from the house, but that's, again, in the moment, it was exactly what we needed to do.
Exactly.
And it was effective, and it just took a little extra doing to make sure that everybody was settled and the story was finished, So yes, I appreciate you doing that.
You're very welcome. Well, yes, the tourmaline works perfectly. You set the intention, that's what it does, and that's all. That's what she needed to do. She also could have kept the tourmaline in the room, but set the intention for the whole property. If
I think at that point she was just like,
because again, you're half asleep. You both have a young, you're both new parents, kind of like at that point, like you're tired. You're thinking very, very straightforwardly. It's like, yes, this needs to be cleaned up right here. We're gonna get this spot. You're not thinking about the whole room, kind of a thing. It's like just this one spot needs to be cleaned.
Though I am worried, because we do have a tourmaline grid in our room and we're missing one.
You don't have to have one in all four corners of the room, because again, it's intention. If it bothers you, then yes, replace that with either another tourmaline or something else that's
right, because my intention is now broken.
Yes, because again, it's just really like the intention is what does it, not the actual crystal on the floor thing.
Right.
It's really your intention. But again, if your mindset, well, if it's missing one, then it is broken. If that's your point of view, then that's how that works. That's simply how that works. It's how you wrap your mind around this. Yes.
Yeah.
Because when I do house clearings and house blessings, I use crystals in a grid when I enter the house, but I usually don't bring them outside. But in my mind, I will create the ley lines around the property to, energize and shield the property from unwanted energies. It just makes me like quick little funny story is I have a client in Huntington, and they have me like they wanted me to block the neighbor from doing their neighborly stuff. So I did my ley line thing, and they've reported to me that it's been a couple of years now. They said they haven't heard a peep out of them. They said these are people who used to play music loud, and they said all I did was set up my ley line, and the noise, they calmed down, or they weren't as weren't as annoying neighbors as they
Aggressive.
once were. So it's just always funny. It's like, 'cause that's all the intention is. They, I created the intention with permission of the owner of that property, and therefore it can work because you set the intention.
But now, would they have to keep that intention going, or is it your specific intention? So they can't
It's my
interfere?
intention, but it's on behalf of the owner who lives there. I'll say, in my theory, my personal theory is, if they ever moved away from that house, that intention is broken, because it's
Right.
specifically their
They're not the
relationship
owners.
with the, yes, that's specifically there for their relationship with their neighbors. So if they leave, it's, that intention doesn't need to exist anymore. But
Yeah.
they could energize it. They've told me they have no idea how to do that, and they don't know how to wrap their mind around that. They just said, you do your thing. That's that's why we have you here. And I'm like, okay, I come do my thing.
Come and bolster it and make sure
Yes.
everything's as supercharged as possible.
And you need to keep in mind, like, intention is so important, and you do need to ground and shield. Because I wanted to bring up, like, a situation I walked. I used to live in the city, around, like, I used to live in Brooklyn, and I've had clients in Manhattan, and I had an interesting couple of days, just traveling from my job I had at the time. Because once, like, I got off the subway, and I was like, running myself through the West Village, and it was early in the morning, because at that point I wanted to be at work specifically early. So I mean, it was early enough, and out of the corner of my eye, as I'm turning, like, the corner, there was a gentleman walking next to me. And I noticed, as he turned with me, as we're turning the corner, I noticed, like, he doesn't have a face. And and since I wasn't expecting that, I mean, so I was caught off guard, and I'm just like, wait, there's no face there. But I'm like, but there's a gentleman next to me, and he's turning the corner with me. And it's just like, all right, that was just like my signal that something, like, that something else was going to be awry, I think, that week for me. Because again, as I'm turning the corner, I'm in Manhattan, so there's people everywhere, but I'm turning the corner, I'm like, there's not really somebody next to me. It's spirit, because then I'm just interacting with spirit, which was, again, in that moment in time, it was a little intimidating. But the following day, I had to visit, for the purposes of my job, I do architecture. So I had to go visit an old building that was out of commission. And this was in lower Manhattan, not all the way down, but, like, just in, the area where the buildings are now, again, just only 2 stories. They're not skyscrapers anymore, and these are old neighborhoods.
Yeah,
so I had to go
brownstones and.
Yep. So I had to go measure a building, and I was doing it by myself, but there was a couple of other people walking around, because they intended to do a flip on this place. And that was a very interesting experience, because as I was approaching the building, I'm like, oh wait, I need to ground and shield, because I feel something's up. And boy, was something up when I walked inside, because the moment I'm like, yeah, at this point now, I'm seasoned enough where I can be like, yeah, I feel all the stuff around me. It's not going to affect me, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to interact with it on some level, because anything you walk into, it's like, you're walking into the mall. Now everybody can be aware that you're here now, and we're going to do things. And that was just a very interesting experience, because it was a place that wasn't under construction just yet, but it needed repair. So there was stuff that had broken and fallen wherever it fell. And there was a couple of I can't even say they were construction workers. I think it was just pre all that. They were just getting prepared, because I was there to measure the place and draw up what the existing conditions were on the computer. And so I'm now looking at, okay, here's one shadow passing me, another shadow passing me. And of course, I already had my rules set up. So it's like, they can't touch me. But I'm watching one shadow pass by, another shadow pass by. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in Manhattan. Of course, there's a lot of activity going on.
Sure.
And I finally get to a room. Well, I'm sorry, I'm in a hallway kind of a space. But when I say a hallway, it's like, in front of me is like along like a large platform. It's like a balcony, because there was a railing to my left and it was open to below, but to the right of me was the rooms that, you know, I was going to go in to do the measuring. And one shadow like passed me and like turned into the next room, and I'm like, okay, that's exactly the room I have to go into now, so let's just go see. Because while I'm doing this, I'm also kind of saying, okay guys, you got to leave me alone. So they're leaving me alone, but I'm watching them do stuff, or like, I guess these shadows cross across the floor. And so I finally get into this room, I turn the corner, and it's not shadows anymore. Like it was only for like seconds, because like in seconds, it's like, I think like, you know, you blink and your eyes refocus and your mind just like blips back into, you know, you're not really seeing any of this anymore, you know. But for a second there, I could have sworn it was two gentlemen like about like having a brawl in my mind. Like in my mind, but I could also see it. But for a split second, it's like, here's two guys about to, I think, like pummel each other, and it's just like, and then it was gone. And I'm like, yeah, it's Manhattan, because there's a lot of history here, lot of history. And as I'm going about the rest of this building, you know, my impressions were like, all right, I really feel like, you know, that escalated to something a lot bigger than, you know, to the point where I think somebody's still here, because that escalated so very much. And as I'm going, like, I can't say deeper into this building, because I did get to the back of the building and come back around, so I really can't say deeper into this thing. But I was on my, like, arcing back on the other side of this space, and it's like, all right, I do feel like a murder occurred here, and related to what I saw in the other room. But as I'm walking, I'm like, okay, there's more than a murder here. There was a murder and then something else. And then I'm just hearing laughing. And I'm like, a little bit of like, not just someone giggling. It's just like, no, there's more to this. And as I'm walking, and I'm like, all right, we can cut the laughing. I don't need that. It's like, I know what's going on. I don't need the Hollywood aspects of this in my head.
Yeah, you don't need the theatrics.
So then the laughing cut off, because as I, you know, once I acknowledged it, like, it stopped. But now I'm like, all right, I like being the devil's advocate, and just to like, well, like, you know, do you have something to say? Because I can listen. And I felt like something wanted to say something, but the words weren't coming about. It's just more like my impression of somebody wants to say something to me, because now I'm kind of asking for it, because again, I like experimentation, so why wouldn't I do such a thing? But so
when there's so much activity.
Yes. So like, as I'm walking around at this point now, I've kind of given up on my job. I'm like, I just want to see what's going on in this place now. Which doesn't matter. I don't work for that company anymore. So like, it doesn't matter that if it ever found out that I was doing that. But it was just hilarious, because I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop working right now, because I need to focus on what's happening in front of me. And I really, you know, my impression was somebody was just leading me, like, you want to be scared, we're going to bring you somewhere. So I'm following just an impression I had, like, I'm going to turn this corner of this building around this balcony area. And it didn't take very long, but we walked into a not so well lit room, because the lights weren't on, but the sunlight was coming in through not broken windows. The windows were fine, but it was still like, you know, a little dim. But what I saw, like, coming, like, just hanging out on the ceiling, was just this thing that had like almost multiple spider tentacles, because it's like, well, I'll say spider's legs, that's a better description, but it's just hanging out on the ceiling. And it's just like, yeah, that's not a good thing to see. And it's just like, do I back away? Because again, my shields are up. I'm intimidated, but only to a point, because I'm like, I'm already set it up where they can't touch me, but I can observe.
So at this point, you're like, you're like in a submarine with an ocean of horror around you.
Yes. And as I'm standing there in this room, because it wasn't a very big room, but it was like bigger, you know, it was bigger than 20 by 20 feet. So it was, you know, sizable enough to be like, because there was something hanging from, like, you know, the ceiling joist above me, because the ceiling joists were exposed. And I'm like, that's a very noticeable thing there. And I'm just like, at this, like where's the actual other people who are physically here with me to like, see what I'm looking at. But no one was around at this point, so I'm by myself, and I'm also watching in my mind another shadow pass me, and I'm just like, all I saw was tentacles, and I'm just like, I mean, I keep saying tentacles. It was more like giant spider's legs. All I saw was legs. It's like there was nothing else. It was just legs from the rafters, and I'm like, that's all I really need to see. I'm going to like make a beeline and start leaving because even though I'm protected and grounded and shielded, it's like I don't need to be here.
Yeah, I know this place is jacked up. I'm bye-bye.
And really why would something like that be occurring? I mean, Manhattan specifically, there's a lot of energy going on. Manhattan is on a ley line, so, but also because of the history.
Yeah.
A few negative events on a property is enough to attract attention, and some things can just grow and manifest in its place.
And fester.
Yes, and really fester. Unfortunately, though, I did have to go back because I left, and I'm like, I gotta go back because I gotta do my job and finish.
You never did the measurements?
Yes, finish the measurements. So I'm like, oh no, I have to go back. And it's like, well, I was standing on the street, and and I grounded myself. I did my meditation, my grounding meditation, and like on the street, on the sidewalk. And I'm sure anybody just watching me, because I did it where I was very noticeable that I was doing something in my own mind at that time. But I'm like, I don't care. I got to go back in. I'm sure people can watch me on the street. Just again, it's Manhattan. You can be the craziest person on the street and nobody cares. So I did my thing, went back inside, and I also, ended up running into the other, I guess, workers who were, just servicing the building at that point. But they must have been spooked by something as well, because they were leaving, but they didn't say anything. They just passed by, and I'm like, they're leaving, and I'm like, but they're leaving it like in a huff. Or something, to me, I felt like, because again, this is, partially the psychic aspect of me. It's like, you can kind of tell when someone's, like, oh no, we're getting out of here now. And I don't know if they saw anything, or maybe they was getting a weird feeling, because when I came back in, the weird feeling kicked right back. It's like the second I'm through the door, I'm like, okay, weird feeling's back on. I got to go do my job. But I didn't see anything after that. It's like, that was it. Like my first experience, because I guess now I was kind of expecting, like, what's the next thing I'm going to see now? And I'm like, now I had an expectation. Now I wasn't seeing anything, but I was still able to tell, like, oh yeah, that's all still here. I'm just not seeing any of it anymore.
Well, they could have spent they could have shot their shot. They're like, this is all we got. Ta-da!
Yeah.
Like, okay, what else? They're like, no, nothing else after the ta-da. That's all we got.
It's funny though, because I do have let's just say sub-spirit entourage with me. That's my my higher vibrating people, and it's interesting now to talk to them while now I'm finishing up the measurements of this place, and they're all just like, don't worry, nothing's here. It's like, no, we're okay, you're okay, you're okay. And I'm like, yeah, just please tell me so I can just finish my job and then get out of here as quickly as possible. And I do remember, it's like, oh my god, I got back on the subway, and I'm just like, oh, I feel like I was just in a movie.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's straight out of a movie.
That was like, that was just like the creepy aspect of that. Some of you need to turn the light on. I definitely want you to leave with me before bed. Yes. Fortunately, I don't think any of this has affected me like personally. It's like, unless I'm harboring something deep down, like psychologically, I hope not. But if I haven't discovered that just yet. But this is basically my life, and but it's not always scary, intimidating things, because again, those would be that would have been a golden opportunity, to pray for some light, in my mind, shoot some light into the situation, shoot some light at the shadows. I was aware of it at the time because I knew enough to ground and shield myself, but I just didn't feel like the need to interfere with whatever was going on there, because I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be acting on behalf of the owner. But I didn't feel like I needed to do anything there. It's just like, nope, I'm just here observing. I don't have to be the cure to anything going on all over the place. Let's just do this and get out as quickly as I possibly can, because I had a different job to do there. But I will say, what's stuck in my mind, I keep saying tentacles. It was spider's legs just hovering like in the ceiling joist, and I'm like, but that's It wasn't a spider, it was just legs. It was just legs in the ceiling joist moving. It wasn't even 8, it was more than that. But it was just like, they were all just doing that. And I'm just like, yeah, there's something else besides spirit, let's say.
Yeah, that's not something that you'd see like a human spirit manifesting as, unless they were really, really, really intent on freaking you out. That sounds like something way lower.
Which they could have been, but that was just an experience. Which there's many, many, many of those in and around the city, not just the city, but in and around cities like Manhattan because of its
Oh,
history.
sure. All
Because
the
of its
all the
history, and
energy.
and I'm sure that's a location that really, really needs a good cleansing and blessing to remove all of that stuff. But I'm surprised I don't have more nightmares sometimes. It's like, no, I
Well,
don't.
because you know what you're doing.
I'm sorry, say it again, Pete.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah,
and you're when you practice protection on a level that you do consistently, there's residual. So it's not like you go to sleep and you turn the force field off. It's always running.
it is always running, and it can always be running, and you're not draining yourself. Like, I'm not draining myself by having it always run, because there's always we all have energy all the time to that we can use to protect ourselves, or we can do other things with that. Because I do want to emphasize to people, like, I've encountered, like, these lower vibrating energies, and they don't have to affect me. And just to explain, they don't have to affect you either. You have to set the rules, set the intentions, set your boundaries. I'll say, not everything's meant for you to help it. If you feel like you want to and you can, I'll say go for it. Just pray and send it light, send it love. I've encountered other spirits where it's just very interesting. All you do is send them, intend them, give them the intention of love. It's like, you know what, you need some love with you today. And it's enough to either make them leave, or they enjoy the love experience, and it just uplifts them enough to just be beneficial to them. Because some energies just simply want to hang around. They don't want to leave. And some of them are just looking for their way to leave, and they just need a little assistance. But it's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I just want to describe for anybody, a grounding exercise. If you can, imagine light from the heavens above coming down and just, forming around your body. If you want to bring in your chakras, activate all your chakras with that light, but send the light all the way down to the center of the earth. Send it from, like, still streaming through you from heaven down to the center of the earth, and bring it back up to you and back up to heaven. That is a grounding meditation. You're imagining yourself engulfed in the white light of protection. Once you've got that going, I'll say you're good to go. And since you've called the light in, you can send the light to anything you're observing, any spirits that might need it, any energies, or any even situations, maybe even unrelated to spirit. In your meditation moments in your mind, just use your imagination to send anybody or anything love and light, and it helps. It uplifts the situation, brightens things up, raises the vibration. If you're trying to help something, it raises the vibration of anything you're trying to do. I hope that makes sense to everybody.
It's attention. Just remember, you are in control. And if you're scared, that's totally understandable. But you're not helpless. You're the one who has a pulse. You're the one who's got the blood. That sounded more reassuring than it felt more reassuring than it sounded. But you are the one in control of the situation, despite what they want you to think.
Yes, no matter what, you're the one in control. So as we said before, there's nothing out there that's stronger than you, because it's interacting in your space. Even if you don't own the space, that's not what we mean. I mean your personal space. It can't interact with you if you don't want it to be there. That goes for anyone and anything out there, because we have free will, and that includes our space. So if there's something interacting with you that you don't like, you can send it away. If you want to bring something good in, you can bring them in. Honestly, if you're done with the good stuff, you can send them away too, because it's your space and you're in command at all times. And how do you bring them in? You just think about it, intend it. How do you send them away? You think about it and you intend it. It's honestly very simple. But again, it may take a few tries to get comfortable with the idea that you are in control no matter what.
And you never poop alone. I don't know. That's just something that I always say. And
Well,
sometimes
everybody brings their phone in now, so theoretically you're not
That's
alone.
right.
You're always in contact with somebody when we're doing stuff like that. All right, Pete. Well, let's see. It's after 8:30, so we ran a little longer than intended, but that's fine. But for I thank you all for listening, and for those of you who may be listening at a later time, like, my name is Joseph Dyro, and I'm a psychic medium based on Long Island, New York. But I will do a little light traveling to locations if anyone's interested in me clearing out their spaces energetically, or giving a space blessing. It's not just houses; I've done it for businesses as well. Also, if you're interested to contact me for a reading, or to connect with your loved ones, or to connect with anything going on, we should do a podcast. Maybe we should, Pete.
Yeah, why not? Right.
And I also want to thank you, Peter Hammarberg, who is an author. You're based in New Hampshire.
Show my books again.
Okay. I was going to do that, but Peter's written some books that I've enjoyed. That's why I'm going to bring them up, like Ravenfrost, which is a nice book. I believe it's available on Amazon if anyone's interested in picking it up. It's a nice read about some spooky happenings with the detective. And another book
There's a lot of cursing in it, but no.
And another book Peter has written is Antilla, was another very enjoyable book that is, I hope it's not reflecting, that is also available on Amazon for people to pick up and enjoy. This Peter is an amazing author. I suggest you read his stuff.
Thank you very much.
Well, you've kept me entertained. This.
And I can personally attest. I can personally attest to your house cleaning, clearing. If people are in need of any kind of help, Joseph is the one to approach, because he's knowledgeable and he just gives, so he's the dude you want to learn from. He's the dude you want to go to. So I highly recommend him, because he's done wonders for us. There's no 1950 pacing housewives anymore trying to get at my kid. So if it happens again, I'll be calling you. So, rest assured, you're always on my mind.
Oh, thank you. And I will answer the call.
Dang right.
So, but yes, if anyone else, if you're interested, please give me a shout out. My email address is josephdyro84@gmail.com. I'm going to type it out in the comments so everybody can see that. If not, I'm available on Instagram, on Facebook. I also have a TikTok that just recently started, so I'll be trying to do TikTok things. Pete, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, I am just about to send my website, hammerblog.com, just to play on my last name. But there it's got some short stories, it's got some poetry, it's got some happenings and ways to contact me and get to my books and such. So, for further reading, please click the link below. But that's pretty much it. That's a good way. And it's got my link tree, so you could always find my Instagram, or you could find my Facebook or my Twitter. And if you want to send a note by Raven, that's fine too, or Ouija board. It's all good.
All right, guys. Well, this is absolutely awesome. I am so very grateful for everyone who has been watching and anyone else who's going to watch in the future. Pete, perhaps we should talk about doing this again sometime.
Yeah, man, I'm down with it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for sitting in, listening to some of our crazy stories. We hope you enjoyed it. We wish you the best. And so, everyone, I hope you have a good night.
Thanks for everything, everybody. Have a good night. Sleep tight. And don't worry about that dark corner in the room at 3 a.m. That sounds like it's breathing.
Yes.
Don't pay it any mind. You're safe.
Good. Let's see. Light a candle. Intend that your room, you're safe and protected.
Get your back scratcher.
Your back scratcher. All right, everyone. Have a good night. I mean, seriously, everybody, though, before you go to sleep, just imagine yourself in good white light. Tell yourself, your angels are around you, your guides are around you. They're here to help you, and you're strong, and everything's good and positive around you. Just keep that in mind. I wish you the best. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.